Now, a public holiday has been declared for Tuesday, and tributes are continuing to pour in for the former Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari, who has died at a clinic in London at the age of 82. The West African regional bloc ECOWAS praised Buhari's legacy, describing him as a distinguished statesman. The African Union said he'd led Nigeria with honor and conviction. A former soldier, Buhari first ruled briefly as a military dictator in the 1980s, then made history in 2015 as the first opposition candidate to defeat an incumbent president, and went on to win another term. But the very attributes that won him plaudits and won over voters, his discipline and strict inflexibility, became liabilities, according to critics. There were a few successes. Security improved in the northeast region, which had been devastated by the Boko Haram insurgency. But that was overshadowed by Nigeria's worst economic crisis in decades. But to those who believed in him, he was an honest leader who tried to fight endemic corruption and to bring order to an often fractious country. In 2015, just before the election that brought him to office, I was invited to meet him to discuss his policies and his chances of taking his APC party to power. Let's take a brief listen. This is your third or fourth bid for the presidency in Nigeria, and all of them have ended in failure. Why are you?
Yeah, well, the rest, they failed, as you said, and we ended up in the Supreme Court of Nigeria. So the cases are now public documents. One can go and get them. We have attempted, and we are going to attempt again for the fourth time, if my party give me the ticket.
Right, but the question is, why are you doing it again?
Yes, because I have been approached by my supporters. At some stage, after the third attempt, I think I will not attempt again. But my supporters said they want me to attempt again, and I agreed, because once I remain in partisan politics, then I have to do what the majority of my supporters want me to do.
What do you think the attraction for you is?
Just to measure the true support I have from the public, if the election is credible.
Do you believe that the elections will be credible?
I am trying to get that. We are trying to mobilize our supporters that they make sure the election is credible by speaking to INEC, by making sure those our agents are up to the task, by getting communication so that they can get from polling unit, they can get to to other polling units and so on, passing out information as the result comes out to collection areas and so on.
What do you think is the big hot button issue in Nigeria today that needs to be urgently addressed?
Security.
And how would you address that security situation?
Well, we hope we will understand the true situation of the security other than the obvious ones. And then we quickly see how we can remove it. But the question of security is number one, and insecurity has to be removed to move forward with Nigeria.
And by insecurity, I presume you're talking about Boko Haram.
Not only Boko Haram, there are abductions throughout Nigeria. Company executives are being abducted, and impossible amounts being demanded. Senior citizens across the country are being abducted. For political, mostly for money, extortion of money. So people are feeling very, very insecure.
Well, that's just a snippet of an interview that I had with President Buhari just before he was elected in 2015. Well, for more on the life and legacy of President Buhari, I'm joined now on the line from Mr. Buhari's home state of Katsina by the lawyer Chukwuemeka Nwajiuba, who served in the former president's cabinet as a Minister of State for Education. Mr. Nwajiuba, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Just tell us more about President Buhari. I notice you've written an ode to him, which seems to suggest a man of contrasts and contradictions.
Good evening, Charles, and good evening, fellow Nigerians. My first duty is to say I share our condolences with the people of Katsina State, the people of Daura in particular, and Nigerians generally, at home and abroad. We are pained by the exit of our loved ex-president, and we're pained that we are here to accord him last rites. But he has lived a very good life. He's done his bit. He's done very well in his attempt to help build a nation and bring everybody together and reach out in so many sundry ways. But like all human endeavors, I mean, with your best intentions, with your best abilities, you are at the mercy of what every other person can do. And so there are limitations to what he was able to achieve, and there are limitations to what he could have achieved. We came into government in 2015 in the height of the Boko Haram crisis. His first duty tour was to take around, go to Chad, go to Niger, go to Benin Republic, got all the states surrounding Nigeria to come to some sort of working agreement to, as he rightly identified at the time, to curb insecurity in the Northeast. He was also very clear on his pursuit of bringing an economic stability, what we used to call this, the three things of security, economics, and anti-corruption. And he faced all of them squarely. Unfortunately, he ran into murky waters when he challenged the siphoning of oil from the wells and transshipments and ban of many of the ships. And that complicated what was at that time his movement, which led to some serious illness because he became very ill, and at a point, he had to hand over to power to the Vice President, Professor Shimbajo, at the time, who was acting for a considerable period of time. And then when he resumed office with a very antagonistic National Assembly, and I'm sure many Nigerians still recall that there were years when we couldn't get the budgets into June or so on and so forth, because he had a different approach to nation building, and this whole idea of budget padding, sharing, and these were things that he didn't think he could condone, but he was, he was told to be pragmatic about this. He couldn't just stay rigid and stoic the way he had thought of himself all his life. He needs to, we are in a democracy, and he couldn't just dictate anything to anybody. And that was very clear in how he came to understand what we were doing as Democrats. And in that system, he had to bow to the party. He had to become more amenable to every other person's nuance. And he realized that governors were way more stronger than anybody could possibly imagine. They handled the party, they took over the party, they took over practically everything. But he did what he thought was best. And he had a lot of mileage from it. He had a lot of infrastructure he built with it. He had a lot of things that he achieved. He quelled some of the riots. They were limited in scope from the arms they purchased from the US, where they could use it. They were told to use it only in the Northeast. Even now, I'm not sure the present government can use them, some of the Tucanos and all of them, but they were around. There were so many issues around governance, which he kept trying to unbutton. And like I said, he did his damn best. He was very good at it. He was available to us. He was available to everybody. He allowed. We had a lot of time when Nigeria's image improved a lot. He went around. He gave himself. He gave of what he could. Whether that was enough, to some critics, of course. I mean, you may not expect that it is enough, but we understand that every man will come with their own limitations. His was probably age, and at the time he had become a bit old. He wasn't going to be the superstar he was as a military man.
Yeah.
And
some would say that
he had to just give what it is that he
right.
thought was the right thing to do at the time.
Right.
So
okay. Well, thanks for setting that out. I mean, the fact is, the fact is that. Can you hear me at all? Right. Okay. I think we've lost him there because he obviously doesn't seem to know that we're talking to him. But I mean that is that's the problem sometimes with communications in more sort of remote parts of the country. But one of the things, just to give a bit of background, while we're trying to reestablish communications with Emeka Nwajiuba, is that President Buhari rapidly rose through army ranks during a period when Nigeria was experiencing frequent military coups. And he was part of a group of military officers who ousted democratically elected governments as well as military regimes. He took part in quite a few of those coups, and then he ended up himself becoming a military leader in the 1980s, but was then overthrown by fellow officers in a military coup. And I'm told that we've got Chief Nwajiuba back now. Sorry, I think we lost you for a minute, so you were kind of whittering to yourself, and we couldn't hear you, and you couldn't hear us. But I mean, you were talking.
Yeah.
The last thing I heard you saying was that you were talking about corruption and his attempts to get past things like the National Assembly and so on. I mean, there were high expectations when he came to office that he would tackle official corruption and widespread poverty, particularly in the north where he comes from, which had made life a misery for millions of people there. Would it be fair to say that those expectations were dashed?
Oh, not at all. I mean, he made very good effort, and he did achieve quite some milestone with all of that. I mean, we were the first to rein in justices. This has never been done. He went visiting and to almost all the judges. I said, look, the crux of this matter is that people are alleging that we arrest economic saboteurs and you let them out. And the EFCC has been reported that 100 or so cases have been hanging in the judiciary for years. I mean, everybody knew what was going on at the time, and nobody had ever addressed it the way he thought it should be addressed, and he went after it. When he got a blowback from that, he stepped back. I mean, he's a reactive person. He was hearing from the rest of the public what exactly they wanted, and he approached them significantly. But more importantly, he was a Democrat in his mindset, a social democrat, and that was why the entire exercise around creating for the first time the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs was a concept about addressing a gamut of social differences, such that we had people going from school feeding to enterprise development to household engagement, family support, all kinds of. We had so many items listed on that. We were intervening in every household in Nigeria. We had system, and I'm sure, though ahead that in this present administration is being suspended since January, but I'm sure that in so many different ways around the north and beyond, because I was also, as minister, supervising what was being done in some parts of the southeast. I saw that that those reached there. So in the north, considerable number of people we had scholarship schemes, we had all kinds of humanitarian schemes, many of which may continue or may be enhanced or maybe otherwise dealt with. The school feeding program was borrowed actually from Osun State. When Aregbesola was governor there, he showed how he could work. So we just transpolated it to the federal level and tried to expand it. So this is a continuum. Nation building actually does not stop at one point. It stops when the nation stops.
I don't mean to interrupt you there. I don't mean to interrupt you. We do have to gallop ahead. But I mean, the fact is that some of his strongest critics are actually people from the northern part of Nigeria. I mean, many of them came out and said that they felt that he, in many ways, had failed to deliver on what he said he would deliver. But in terms of his achievements, he did manage to reduce Islamist violence in northern Nigeria, but he failed to decimate Boko Haram as he had promised he would when he came into power. And that was one of the ways he convinced the electorate, wasn't it? By citing his tough military record and saying that he will get rid of Boko Haram. But that didn't happen, did it?
Well, it did to a large extent, and I understand why in the north that there's a gap in some expectations delivered, because they expected much more, and the volume of expectations should actually naturally be higher, considering what they were going through at the time. There were almost 14 local governments that were not in their hands, and so they expected that to be recovered, which he did. Then they wanted to grow from there, and the expectation was, and should be rightly, that enhancement of things that should support life here should happen more rapidly to enable them catch up somewhat with the rest of the country. But that gap can't be bridged by government alone. There's so many institutions around the north, and not many of them are working still. And like I keep emphasizing, that job does not stop. What Buhari had done was lay a lot of foundation. We have a lot of universities spread out in the north here. Here in Daura, we have the new transport university. This wasn't in existence there. And then we have a myriad of other colleges and places to enhance human capital development, to be able to address the gaps in social inequalities here. Now, and around Katsina alone, or any part of the north where you have been to, all the dots of what it is that he built in the 8 years are very clear. However, they are all foundation and building blocks towards a bigger society and greater Nigeria. All the ideas around agricultural improvements, because if you remember, the whole idea of food security was a concept that he apportioned a great deal of time. And that was what led to the Kebbi rice revolution, that led to Lake Rice in Lagos. Anything you see here were thought out programs that directed. I mean, we could not have fed ourselves during COVID if, for instance, Buhari had not undertaken by himself to ensure that Nigeria was food sufficient. Because at the time when we ran into COVID, and I was in cabinet, we knew we could not even have purchased food for our citizens if we were not producing. He was like a man who saw tomorrow. He protected, he delivered, he produced. Yet, I keep saying, nothing stops where it is done. It is work in progress. The idea was for us to build on what all of these things are, not to terminate them, not to begin to deharvest when we had not gotten to the peak of some of these things. So like I also emphasize to you about the recoveries in Boko Haram. Yes, you may have recovered the northeast, but then most of the gangsters in that end moved southwest, and then became amortized around our country.
Right. Let me focus on the economy for a minute. I hope you can still hear me, because you're looking a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah, you can hear me. Good. Let's focus on the economy for a minute, because let's be quite clear that he struggled to get a handle on it. When he came into office, oil prices started falling, and that was the main source of revenue for Nigeria. He had promised to ramp up agriculture and manufacturing and to get more into mining to exploit Nigeria's other mineral wealth. But his critics say he failed to diversify Nigeria's economy in such a way as to grow that economy and soften the shocks. And he was there for 8 years.
Yes, but you know, Charles, I agree with you in so many respects. But in the issues of related to these figures, I don't know what his critics are looking at. All the figures from every known publication in the 8 years are clear. This is an economy that recovered from recession twice. This is an economy that ran into COVID. This is an economy that he did exceedingly well in economic terms. We held this dollar at the exchange rate. We held it at the time he left at less than 500. He held subsidy so that Nigerians won't die. The number of deaths in the last 2 years alone has exceeded the number that voted for some people. I mean, just from tankers falling and people being burnt, people going for Christmas gift, people going to look for food, and they die from it. He knew, and he granted an interview to BBC why he wanted to defend Nigerians ahead of others. He knew the Nigerians weren't producing enough. And if Manufacturers Association reported in the last 2 years that the 183 industries had already died and left, that means they were surviving when he left. Right. There's a difference what people are talking about. He did this work, and the numbers are there to show. I mean, in January of 2024, we published the annals of his book. He came and he asked everybody to challenge that. I mean, Femi Adesina, who also published his book alongside it, brought a compendium of what we were able to do.
Right.
I'm not just talking about in one direction. He had a gamut of the country does not run on a stream.
Yeah.
Everything we did in mining, the improvements in the non-oil revenue that we had, or the improvements in non-oil exports, improvements in oil exports, the idea behind condensates, everything that we did in government are all
okay, look, I understand
Buhari
that.
did a lot of work. He did a lot of work. They were very successful.
Okay.
But I keep saying he is human, and nobody has a compendium of all knowledge.
Right.
And
okay. Let's talk.
Actually, a very successful one at that.
Right.
Very successful.
Let's talk a little bit on the personal side. We've literally got like 2 minutes left, so if you could keep your answers reasonably short, I'd appreciate it. We mustn't forget one of the most notorious moments of his presidency, which came after that public spat with his wife Aisha, when he said he may not know what party she belongs to, but as far as he's concerned, she belongs to the kitchen and the living room and the other room. I mean, how much did that make him look quite medieval in the 21st century?
Oh, no, not at all. They have a very good relationship, and he jokes a lot like that. He looks, I mean, if you know the First Lady, she's a warm, caring mother. She has her kids, and you know, like every other person, Buhari has a family life. People like us are not involved in his family in any way. We're actually political in his political life. There are those in his social life, his friends like IBB and those people who are his own contemporaries. People have almost a four-pronged lifestyle. I mean, your family, your political life, your business life, and your social life. He has all that component. But if you meet him with his family, you know he would say this. I think he was just relating a joke that he would relate with his wife. And his wife has never come out to say, well, there's any difference. And all his children, well, I mean, when the only thing is he wasn't the kind of person to bring his family into. Let's not compare. I mean, Yusuf, his son, is so lovely that even the only time Nigerians even realized he had a son was when he was wounded, and he was in a hospital in Cedar Crest near my house, and people heard that we were looking for how to give him better treatment. But he's a man that he was open. I mean, he was jovial. They cracks jokes with anyone. And if your wife or children are having their own weddings, even if he can't make it, he will send somebody to just share the moment with you. He was like that. So when he said, look, I don't know if she wants to join political party or she's in a party, but me, I know her, and this is what I know her for. And then if I eat, because he didn't used to play with his food, but I said, look, and this is what the other room has become some sort of way to regard and say, well, me and you, we are involved. That's that kind of thing, yeah.
Well, I mean, we've got about 30 seconds, and it's been really nice to talk with you. What do you think his lasting legacy will be?
People should remember him for his being forthright, being sincere, being open and straightforward. I mean, he said what he wanted to do and did what he said he wanted to do. Those that came out well, fine. Those that didn't come out well, fine. He knew where he was and he stood by it. And he's been like that since he was born. And I think that's where he is. And he has exited as such. He's been stoic. He's been committed. He's been patriotic. And every patriot will recognize that he did his best and he gave it all.
And on that note, I want to thank you very much indeed, the lawyer Chukwuemeka Nwajiuba, who served in the former president's cabinet as a Minister of State for Education, talking to me on the line there from Mr. Buhari's home state of Katsina. Thank you very much indeed.